welcome to yet another edition of Bob Talk. My name is Reo Raymond, and I'm in the company of someone who's now Mrs. Universe, women empowerment. In fact, she's back. We had to talk about this topic in detail the last time. But the moment we spoke about this and went back, the world started getting smaller around us. So, Shreya Krishnan, welcome back to Bob's Radio, and congratulations.
Thank you. Good to be here again. Good to be in conversation with you again.
I like the fact that you traveled and won this crown and came back. But I was jealous because you got to travel to the whole Nicaragua.
No, I was in Dominican
Republic, and I
and
was
the
like,
Caribbean. Yeah.
did you get to fulfill your dancing desires there?
Oh, I did completely. And everybody there was like, "Where did you learn to dance like this?" And I was doing the merengue, and that's the most casual sort of
Yeah.
social dancing that they do. So they all were like, "You dance like us. You have a Latina in you." And I was like, "Yeah, I feel like that." Plus the Caribbean beaches. So I'm very grateful. I got a week-long, beautiful getaway. I learned a lot of Spanish. So I'm very
So,
happy.
what would you say? How was your trip in Spanish?
How was my trip in Spanish? I can say bonita, which is beautiful, and I can say gracias, which is I'm grateful. Thank you.
Bonita, señorita.
Bonita, señorita. That's one of the most
Used,
easy things.
the ones that
Yeah.
you can easily, and then por favor, which is because of all the Spanish series.
Of course, yeah. Por favor. I learned things like comprende. Comprende?
understand.
Did you understand? Did you understand?
See. I have to put subtitles for this now. But anyway, it's so good to have you back, and also just wowed and enamored by how you are going for this pageant and you just went bald at a whim.
Yeah.
How, it's very rare to find women because that's a crown of a woman in any way. And then you will
Yeah, I mean, break the stereotypes. But honestly, I had done this before as well. Even for my previous pageant, I had really short hair. I had a boy crop at that time. For this, it was unintentional. Bangalore got really hot, if you remember,
Yeah.
in April. And I got so annoyed because I'm right now working a double shift. I work
Right.
with the US and with India. I just didn't have time for my hair. So, when I wanted a cut, and my friend, he's a stylist from Bombay, he came home. I said, you know what? Take it all off. I forgot about
This was at
the
home that you
pageant.
did?
Yeah, this was done at home. I forgot about the pageant. I forgot about everything. I was just like, it's too hot. Today I can't deal with this hair. I'd rather be free. And that's how I did it. And it so happened that so many people wrote to me and said, thank you for sporting this look. I'm going through cancer. It gives me the confidence to sport it. We often put too much value to our physical attributes, and especially hair length for women. I know so many people who want a short look, but they don't know how it'll look. My thing is the opposite. Do it and then own it. Don't
like
think
you'll
too
never
much
know
about
till
it.
you try.
Exactly.
And also, I think because of the whole industry beauty standards and how a woman should look, and that makes you feel better and confident. I think confidence is more about how you feel for yourself.
Yeah.
And someone should learn from how you can do this, yeah?
I mean, it's easy when you decide to cut out the noise. That's my thing. I'm
But
like,
how did your, I don't know what we call it, image consultant,
she freaked out. She called me and she said, and I've not connected the two at all, right? She calls me the next day and she says, what did you do? I was like, no, now what did I do? Because, she was preparing me, right? Because I'm not this major style icon or anything. I'm usually in my saris and doing my own thing. So she's like, you can't do what you usually do. You need to plan for this. You need to pack for it. You need to have, a range of clothes for it and things like that. So I was like, now what did I do? What did I not do? She's like, you cut your hair, you shaved your head. I said, yeah. She's like, you remember you have the pageant in 3 weeks? I said, oh, that. And I was like, don't worry, it'll be fine.
Was it a drunk choice, Shreya?
No, it wasn't. I don't get drunk only through the week nowadays because I have so much work. I can't even have a glass of alcohol in peace. So now I'm just working. So this was a drunk state of work, excess work. When you've overworked, you're like in sleepless.
Like that hungover work format where you're like just groggy.
Yeah.
And the heat just got to us the whole
heat.
summer.
I think the heat was it. I think that's when I was like, oh, now I'm perimenopausal. That means menopause is going to hit me very soon. So that's when I started realizing, I'm like, oh, my body is not what it was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Now age is catching up.
Well, you did what you had to do,
Yeah.
and you did turn a lot of eyeballs, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, what are you planning to do and stuff, and but you did build a lot of confidence in people,
Yeah.
and yet you look so beautiful and strong as a woman like you always do. So hence there was no way that title was not going out of your hand or away from your head. So congratulations on that
Thank
once
you.
again.
Yeah, it's an interesting crown to wear. I like the fact that it was about projects and, what impact that you had created. And I like that it was not the regular pageant because the focus was 60% was on the work that you had done.
Right.
And I just found that to be really interesting. And meeting all of those women doing the kind of work that they do around the world was great.
Well, so this had nothing to do with beauty. This was
No.
just purely based on the kind
Yeah.
of work that you've done socially.
I mean, and of course, there was, we had the whole finale, which was around your walk. And I also happened to, which is the most funniest thing because I can't walk, I can't ramp walk. I can only dance on stage. So that's what I did.
Can I
right?
say you have sort of a very happy childish walk?
I can't do the very poised and I can't do that. But what I can do is I can dance on stage to any music because music is a vibe for me. That's what I did, and I also won top model. So I was like supermodel, the title, and I was like, okay, that's new.
Maybe you're setting standards there.
I don't know what I was setting, but I had fun, and that shows. And a lot of people don't realize that. When you go somewhere and you're authentic and you're just having fun and you're not worried about competition, which is what my friends are saying, when everybody must have been scramming, you must just have been chilling, which was true. I was either working or I was relaxing because my life has been preparation for this, right? I'm talking about the work that has happened. So I didn't need prep. I didn't need... It seemed a little too easy and flow, but I think that helps because you're not going to compete. You're not stressed. You can be yourself. You can do what you want. I got the first round needed a short white dress, but what I'd carried was a full length gown. And they got very worried because I didn't know till the last minute and we had 1 hour. I got them to cut it. Yeah. I said, just cut it.
The Indian hacks, the jugards of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, what? It's such a beautiful gown. I said, we don't have time now. Everybody is going to be in short dresses. If you want to make it look uniform, just cut the gown. So my hairstylist had joked. I said, you didn't have anything to do with my hair, but you could at least cut my dress.
If not cutting my hair, at least my dress.
Yeah.
Well, it's all worked well. It's all worked in favor of you. And like you actually put it out right by saying it's about you being yourself. And the moment the jitters get in, you've lost a lot of you. And hence, whichever space you are, you lose that whole audience as well.
Yeah.
So couldn't have put it better. Now here we are to talk about the subject that we wanted to talk about the last time, but of course we were talking more in terms of women.
Yeah.
But this time it's more about the Pride Month that we wanted to speak about.
Yeah.
Seems like you're excited, all the snapping of the fingers.
Yeah.
I'm excited because I know for a fact that, whenever I speak to you, usually I believe like with others, there's better sense will never prevail. But when it comes to you, the better sense comes to me as well.
Okay.
Right? And with that thought, let me ask you, what does the LGBTQ to you mean?
See, to me, Pride and LGBTQIA plus means that I have to understand that gender is not binary anymore, which means it's not man and woman anymore, right? To me, the way I see gender is as a spectrum. There are people on different parts of the spectrum, just like mental health is a spectrum, just like you understand neurodiversity, neurodivergent, people with ADHD, people, that's also a spectrum. As our awareness is increasing, we're also understanding gender as a spectrum, right? What do we mostly see? Cis-het men and cis-het women. What does that mean? That is born a man, heterosexual. That's the kind of... But as the conversation goes further, you recognize that bisexuality is a very common norm. That, there's a whole bunch. Like children, when they are born, are mostly bisexual. Sexuality is a choice that you grow into. Psychologically understanding it, yes, you pick up the gender of, like, for instance, the way you play with a boy baby versus way you play with a girl baby. Babies are born without really gender adaptation other than the biological gender. The sociological norms of gender are adopted as they grow. And when you look at the LGBTQIA and the Pride spectrum, what you recognize is that these are not they're all part of the spectrum. They've not been part of the narrative because we chose to see gender as binary, as man and woman, right? So now there is a correction happening in saying, okay, and what does it need? It needs our acceptance of them, that's all, right? There is no fear, there's no stigma. Can we just be accepting? Just like I would accept you in a social circle, why can't I accept somebody else who chooses to have a different social, standing in terms of their gender or the way they
Identity.
express their sexual orientation?
Where do you stand, Shreya? Are you part of the umbrella or are you an ally?
I'm an absolute ally. I would love to say I'm pansexual, but I haven't explored enough to put that into action. Pansexuality means you're attracted to beings in general. But I am an absolute ally. I believe that it's important for us to respect the journeys that most of these people have had. It's not easy, especially, you were in an all boys school. You can imagine what experience, probably children who were growing up to become gay men would have in school. It's not a safe environment, and kids are mean, right? So it's when somebody says that they are not part of the norm, it takes a lot of strength and courage. And it also takes a lot of, they go through a lot in their lives from a struggle perspective to be able to come out and say it openly. Or imagine the struggle of never being able to say it openly, right? You're still dealing with an authenticity issue because you're not accepted, you're not seen, you're not heard. Or if you are, you're bullied. The approach is very different. So I think to really raise awareness around the fact that you don't have to do anything, but as an ally, you just have to respect the other person and their journey. And it starts with such a simple thing. It's not like you have to go to a pride march, wear pride colors, nothing. But stop judging the other person.
Right.
And that's true for any human being, right? If you remove judgment, you're able to meet the other person in a very open headspace. And that's all it is.
Well, just like you, who was an ally, this is what we wanted to discuss about. I believed I was an ally. And we come from a time and space where there was homophobia, LGBTQ was ridiculed. Anyone said gay, like even we said, stop being a gay fuck. We always said these kind of things.
Yeah.
But today we're in a place where I think we've come a long way. We've become more receptive.
Yes.
And even for me, today I feel like I've repulsed from the idea of being an ally.
Right.
Okay, for me and a lot of people that I know as well. The reason being is not because we're not empathetic. The reason being is not because we don't want to accept, people the way they want to be. But sometimes, like I was having a discussion with an activist, it just becomes overbearing on us. When I say overbearing, for example, if I'm going to talk to someone, all my life, yes, there is a social construct. There is a social construct in everything that we've done. And this is not something that's been like for 1 or 2 decades, but for generations and eons, right? So when you have this set in, suddenly you come in saying, I'm a cat, I'm non-binary, I'm binary. For people regular, like say, maybe for us, we don't know these things because we never felt the kind of emotions that they are going through. We never felt the changes in our chromosomes the way they are going through. Yes, we understand that. But then there comes a point when you, instead of having a dialogue, you shove it down my throat. But you don't want me to be the way I am, but you expect me to be expect me to treat you the way you are and love you for that. Then it becomes very contradictory, doesn't it?
But there is a very small percentage of that. I think what they want is just to be seen and to be respected. Like the entire journey of people, especially who are visibly gay or visibly trans is visible, right? The looks that they get, the judgments that they get, the non-safe spaces that they have. Men are very cruel to gay men. Right?
This part of it, no, it's always the men that are being targeted, and it's also the men who are becoming
No, I'll tell you
trans.
why. The reason for violence in men or the toxic masculinity trait is built into our societal conditioning, right? So when we are conditioned to believe that anything non-masculine is not being man enough, you would have heard it. Oh, please be a man, grow some balls. What do you say? So constantly we are making gender the hero, right? We're building, especially the male gender. So when men come to face, I don't know if you've read, there are a lot of books about straight men suddenly realizing that they're bisexual. And they
I've heard
become
of
very violent with gay men. Because in their head, there is a conflict between the toxic masculinity that tells them that if they're attracted to another man, the whole faggot ideology, the derogatory way of speaking to gay men comes from your own inner insecurity, and that's true for everything, right? When a man gaslights a woman, or when a man is being narcissistic, it is coming from their insecurity. And the same is true for the other way. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure when a woman's manipulating a man, it's coming from her own inner insecurity. But what has happened is when you don't accept things that are not part of the norm, and when you push them to the edge, it's like kids who rebel.
Yeah.
Right? In our teens, why are we rebelling, especially from
Never
homes
wanted
that...
to accept what was
Exactly,
told to us.
right? Because we felt misunderstood. So I keep saying that. Can you look at them as people who are now accessing their rebellion as a way of expression? We've all rebelled as a way of expression. Can we respect that? Because when you respect that, you can have a dialogue which is cordial. Then it's not an attack.
Yeah.
When you go to attack, the response is usually either offensive or defensive.
Right.
We all play football. We know, right? So what are we doing? Are we creating the space for a dialogue, a conversation? Or are we sort of ostracizing them and saying, I don't engage? More often than not, it's a combination of a lot of these factors that creates that disharmony or that fear. Tell me this. Every man I meet, I'm not assuming is going to hit on me. So why do men who meet gay men assume that every man will hit on them?
It's okay. Like you said, there's these are assumptions. Are you saying there's maybe selective studies that could be possible?
No. See, sexuality is a choice. I can't assume every man I'm meeting or every man I'm hanging out with just because he's heterosexual is hitting on me. Then why do gay people get targeted saying they're probably not, they're just being themselves, right? And gay is also such a stereotype. Like I have Suresh Ramdas, who's a very dear friend, who's Mr. Gay India, and he talks about it. He says, I have nothing to do with fashion. He works in, learning and development and DEI and all of that. And he says, but the stereotype that constantly he faces is about, oh, gay men are all like, fashionable and turn. It's not. That's again a stereotype. So we need to understand that we're constantly using what media is showing us because we probably don't have enough people. Like for me in college, I had 3 people who came out to me. I had a friend who was lesbian. I had a friend who was gay. I had actually 2 friends who were bisexual as well. And we had a safe enough circle for them to say, this is who I am. Although their homes, they couldn't, right? I've had conversations with a gay friend of mine who had said way long ago saying, listen, I don't think I ever want to get married, but I do want children. So if I find a gay partner, will you be a surrogate? To be able to say that to somebody. And I said, yes, heck yes. If you want to at any point in time, you have a womb you can borrow. But to be able to be in a dialogue like that takes a lot of maturity. Takes a lot of maturity for both sides.
I think it's to open the doors and say, I'm receptive to you. That's as easy as it gets.
And basic respect, right? I see you. Okay, if this is what you choose, just like I'd like you to see me. As a Shreya Krishnan who does what I do, for you to see me and respect me and call me, I recognize and go with she, her. Now, if somebody else, if I wanted to be called they, them, I would like to be called they, them. No, it's just like my name. You want to call somebody their name by the right pronunciation. It's the same thing of the pronouns.
Which is what a lot of people find it hard to, accept that part. I will respect you. I will accept you for what you prefer in life, what you want to be. But the moment it comes to, it's very push comes to shove. It's like it becomes a little too robust. You need to address me as they and them. That is when you're repelling the people who want to come and support you. I'm not saying, I know people come from a lot of emotional trauma. They come from a lot of stuff that they've gone through in life, not being able to be themselves, not being able to openly have a conversation about the things that they could. But we've come a long way. Is what I mean. I'm not saying this only because of what I'm saying, but also people
we've come a long way as you and me.
Yeah.
The rest of the world is not like that still. I still have friends who tell me, friends in high places, who tell me, please, all this transgender thing is a fad. I have friends who come up to me and say, my question to them is, why do you think it's a fad? Do you think somebody would put themselves to that level of trauma and dissociation with themselves and go through that kind of a receiving end of not being acknowledged or being shunned? Or nobody is going to do that if it's a fad. You can be bisexual as a fad because that doesn't, that's a choice that you're making with. But for people who are trans or for people who are choosing to change the way they are, or for people who are coming out about their sexuality, it's a very nuanced, layered thing. And even as an ally, I don't know the breadth of that. But what can I do? Just the same way I'd like to say, if your name was, let's say, an exotic name, I'd ask you 2 or 3 times, right, to understand and call you by the name that you'd like to be called. They, them is a pronoun, and I would think that's just an extension of the name, right? It's about giving them that respect and saying, I acknowledge you. The reason conditioning is so deep in us is why we're not able to call it they, them.
And also,
They'll
like you
write to
said,
you.
conditioning. But
It's
with
conditioning.
conditioning, also, it takes time for some people to be okay with it. Even if, for example, Shreya becomes Priya someday. All my life, I've known you as Shreya. One day, I go and Priya. Like, it takes time for me to also get adjusted to that.
It
And
does.
also, with there, it is a name. For right now, for people, it's more like a salutation of greeting somebody with a he or they, or, the way they address somebody. So that, it's like you're breaking the grammar of someone to change for the liking of what you think is right.
Yeah, we don't use nigger anymore, right? It's a term that was used
But
so
nigger is more like a
But
derivative term.
again, that is how we see it because of the black movement, because black lives, because all of that, right? It's the same way for the LGBTQIA folks. The same way we change language to make it more inclusive. This is a form of accessing language to make it more inclusive. I'll tell you, there's a problem with gender stereotyping. Men and women have so much of struggle because of the stereotypes we already have on our gender, right? Won't it be so liberating for us to be liberated from those stereotypes ourselves? Won't it be so much more easier if we didn't have to, you know, fall under the pressure of those stereotypes? I'll tell you, Google Translate, I was discussing this yesterday. If you were to put, she likes to cook, she loves basketball, and she folds her laundry in a non-gender language. There are a lot of languages without striling, pulling, without the masculine and feminine, right? If you were to feed that into Google, Google will translate it as, she loves to cook, he loves basketball. Automatically, the gender stereotype has gone today. The biases have entered AI as well. So you can't anymore say language cannot change. Language has to change. Language is biased. And language's bias can be removed only if we start choosing to see language as a way of communication and addressing somebody. And your acceptance of being accepted as an ally comes more when you're able to see them as they want to be seen. Right? So that's the first step towards allyship. I see you. I'll engage with you. You're another human being on this experience. And I see you as you want me to see you. And the least I can do is call you the name that you'd like to be called and the pronouns that you associate yourself with. For some people, it can be very triggering, right? If somebody has been asked to be a woman all through life and is now trans and is a trans man, saying she to that person or using their dead name can be very triggering. So it's like if you don't associate with that name or that pronoun, it's pulling you back into a time where you were forced to live with it. Right? So imagine being forced to live with that, the experiences of that. So it can pull up a lot of those memories, which is why being sensitive to that and calling them by what they want is the least amount of respect that we can show somebody.
I agree with you, and I will disagree with you in some parts. There is no problem for us to, address somebody with the way they want to be addressed. But the moment they don't give us the time to adjust ourselves to the changes, that's what the problem is. That's one. Now, the other thing that you also mentioned was how men, because you say of toxic masculinity and all these things are stemming off from our conditioning and everything. You also accepted that people have changed. You could say it's only us, but then I see a large part of people are very receptive today. To a point, I could also tell you that I was just talking to one of the lecturers today, not today, a couple of weeks ago, and she was giving me facts about how kids today boys have done it all, which meaning to say they are very open in today's society because they've been given the platter of being receptive, being liberal by the parents who accepted the way they want to be. They're extensively engaging in intercourse with their male friends and stuff, and they're like readily talking about it, and like how we would talk about football or cricket back in the day. So things have changed, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at it this way, and they are being receptive, But you could say, okay, the older society, the older generation is not being receptive, but the older generation is ones that making the way for the younger ones to be, liberated today.
See, again, it's very. What really happens, unless there is shared information or data, is just a perceptional thought of what could be, right? Until there is research that showcases to us that, okay, this is what teenagers are doing, or this is what young adults are doing, or this is what students are doing, what we're perceiving is either the narrative that they're creating. Because there's also, let's remember that it is cool, you know? So these tags of, oh, it's so cool to experiment, is also the pressure that conditional society around them is putting on them. Now, when I see it as, okay, it is good to be liberal, it is good to have choice, it is good to exercise that choice, it is good to be able to be seen and accepted for who you are and as you are. But a lot of times the problems that come up are because of the same conditioning that's keeping us. No, I'm not saying that the past was bad. Everything is a journey, right? Today's future is tomorrow's
Tomorrow's
past.
past.
So, for us to be able to sort of look at it from a lens of saying, what is my need to engage in this? How do I want to be seen in this? How do I want to engage in this? And my own unlearning of saying, to me, the world is not binary anymore. I don't make gross, broad brush, stereotypical comments anymore because I'm very careful about the way I say. I'm very intentional about the way I engage. And when you look at mythology, there's enough proof to say, whether you take Ardhanarishwara or whether you take from Chinese yin, ideologies, yin-yang ideologies.
A lot of representations.
There's a lot of representation of the being, which is neither a woman nor a man, right? So that's the whole access to the non-binary. So in my head, the way I see it, there's enough representation of it, from Shakespeare to, famous people back in the day being gay, being bisexual, being lesbian, has always been sort of under the wraps because it's not been spoken about. But when you look at, liberated sexuality, it's about your choice. And it's about respecting that choice. That's why I keep coming back to respect. Because if I respect your choice, I will expect you to respect my choice. And when we look at respect and reverence, I mean reverence to you and the being that you are, you automatically make it about a conversation, a dialogue, not a debate.
Right.
And I feel that there is magic in that dialogue because I have to unlearn as much I need to unlearn. The other person has to learn patience to be able to meet me where I am at. And for me to ensure that I remember, oh, this is not what they were called. They prefer to be called they, them. Yes, it takes time. In our offices, some of us volunteer to be called they, them so that people can get used to the grammar. Renan Martin has taught us so well that it's grammatically incorrect. But we continue to say, can I instead of may I? It's just that switch. It's the intentional switch to use language as a way of being more inclusive.
Even when you say they, them, in the Indian way of looking at, when you look at an elder, when you look at a lot of people, we say aap, we say avaru, we don't say
it's neutral.
avnu or something, right? So it's pretty neutral. Somewhere it becomes like, it's a force with respect is what some people think. I'm not saying that is wrong. Now that's one thing. Now the other thing, which you actually mentioned is about the men part of it. There's a reason why a lot of people hate people like the Karan Johars and stuff, but there's a reason why I kind of respect him, is because he broke the norm and came out.
Yeah.
And there are also people who are closet bi, and sexuality is a preference, right?
And it's a choice, and it's a personal choice. It's an intimate choice.
Yeah. So if I'm going to go and be intimate with somebody, it's my choice. So it's not about you having to respect it, but you don't have to ridicule it.
Yeah.
If you can't respect it, I think people can just shut up. And I think today we become a little more, sensible in terms of, because before, bugger, what, you went and did this and came. So instead of that, today it's more like, okay, let it be. We've given you space. But there are people who have, let's say, there are men in higher positions. We've heard of these as well. Married with kids and a closet bi. And the reason they don't come out and thing is because there is this what do you say, structure that is built, this perception that is built,
Safety. They feel safe in the spaces but that's again
but
their
also
choice.
because of the fact that this is the ideal man of having a family and stuff.
Exactly, right?
So I think that is again conditioning, and I definitely accept that. How do you break that? If you ask me, is okay, I will not talk about these people because maybe, and there are also cases where men become bi over time because of the kind of conditioning that's happened at home over the years where the wife doesn't care about them, and then they find solace some other places. Because these are conversations I've had with people from the community, where like old men go after younger men on Grinder and dating apps.
A lot of times we don't recognize this, but people, I think, discover their bisexuality in two ways. Young boys who were molested or, inappropriately dealt with sexually tend to come to face their bisexuality. They say 98% of the world is bisexual. Okay, so you're born bisexual and you choose to be, homosexual, heterosexual based on your journey and all of that. And also, bisexuality is a discovery. It's also about how comfortable you are in your own skin to be able to explore something that is not part of the normative cultures that are driven. But sexuality was a spectrum way back in the day. Okay, you will hear about indigenous cultures being openly sexual. You will read about a lot of cultures being very vibrant in terms of their exploration of sexuality. And I think being more open to the fact that it's a choice gives us the ability to accept that choice in other people. As long as you're not forcing me into your choice. I'm a vegetarian. I'll take the analogy of a vegetarian by choice. I'm a vegetarian by choice. I choose to eat vegetarian food. I'm at most tables with most of my friends who are all non-vegetarian.
Non-vegetarian.
And I'm traveling to countries like Bali, etc., where everything from octopus to frog's legs is on the table, and I'm eating a Buddha bowl. I get laughed at and I get teased, but nobody ever tries to convert me into being non-vegetarian because they respect the fact that I'm vegetarian by choice. That's what it is about sexuality. Absolutely okay to be at the table with different forms, kinds, and expressions of it. But if I'm choosing to be vegetarian, I'm happy being vegetarian. Respect my choice, just like I respect your choice to eat everything from squid to octopus to frog's legs. I mean, I celebrate you. I expect you to celebrate me. Don't ostracize me. Don't say you're not invited to dinner because you're vegetarian. Only this food is available. I will make that choice on what I want to eat. But I still want to be with all of you. And I don't want to be left out. Because this is still a group. It's a community. It's the same analogy. It's the same metaphor.
I agree with you with this as well because I've heard that some people are not let into restaurants.
Yeah.
Some people are not let into hotels as well to make a
Yeah.
booking, and I've seen it online as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hate people from the community get, especially influencers. They
Yeah.
call them hijra, chakka, in spite of them transitioning. My empathies are with them, but there's sometimes what happens is because a lot of people from the community are portrayed out to be too loud and abrasive whenever they're out in public. Like maybe there's a lot of PDA.
Change.
People are not used to that kind of atmosphere. I agree. See, in India, we're completely different from the West. Yes, Bangalore is a huge influencer of the West, but there are points you think about. Okay, we're not westernized, then you tend to tone down your behavior, tend to tone down a lot of things. So when this kind of a sudden storm of a behavior is thrown at people, for example, I was talking about this to Romal as well. In Chinlung, back in the day, every Saturday there used to be a lot of people from the gay communities to come. Not one person would go and say anything to them. No one would ridicule them. Maybe there were very few cases. But then there is also this loud, aggressive PDA behavior from the people in the community. Some are comfortable, some are definitely not okay with it. Just like how you'll have aunties and uncles will not be okay with a lot of things that you do, there will also be people who are okay with what you do. So same way, I think in the society, we have people that definitely are not going to be okay and ridiculing you with whatever you do. But there are people who will support you. Now, the same people, that one pocket of people who are going to support you, you turn out to be aggressive against them. And that becomes very repulsive. So people who want to support you, you're just showing them away. That is what I'm trying to say.
So I'll tell you what, that comes from insecurity again. They don't feel safe. So for them to know that you're supportive or protective, there is a lot more that you need to like, especially for communities who have dealt with within their own communities a lot of microaggression, gaslighting. All these communities are dealing with a lot of that because there's, it's
Yeah,
internally also there's a lot of political. Any small community, you make it slightly larger, there's politics.
everyone wants attention,
Right?
so
There's I wouldn't call but there's politics. Right? Firstly, the understanding that the whole heteronormative culture is a Western culture, by the way. India was never heteronormative, and never did we categorize, just the entire concept of the Ardhanarishwara, and to have the dancers that we've had, to have had the lineages of, whether you look at across the country, the kind of male dancers accessing both their masculine and their feminine, the kind of historical information that we have around women and women accessing their sexuality and their liberation in India. If you go back into the text, it's very clear that it was very liberated. The binary heteronormative idea of sexuality is a very Western ideology. Okay, it's a very colonial hangover ideology. That's not how India has ever been. India has always been a land of different kinds of tribal cultures, indigenous cultures, all kinds of, it's a melting pot. And when you live that kind of a life, you are very open to people experiencing. This may be your choice, but you're very open to people experiencing that choice. So that's first. To say that it's a Western culture, it's not. It's the Western culture that's actually cishet, homophobic. At least that's how it used to be, and now they're transitioning.
So now the Westerners are influencing us.
Are finally breaking those norms and are going ahead from where they were in terms of their stigma. So when you look at that, that's one premise. Two, when you speak about people sort of acting out or lashing out, they're not used to being safe. So this is like women walking on the street at night. Anybody they see, they think is like a personal threat to them, right? So if you have not had a safe space, irrespective of whether you're safe or not, you will be seen as somebody who's going to attack them, right? Yes, it's important to ask for consent, and I would say consent in every relationship, whether it's man, woman, woman. Consent is one of the most primary things that we have to learn, and that's very clearly something that we need to imbibe into our culture. But the other thing about, being loud and proud, I think comes from having been so repressed for so long. It's again the rebellion, right? When India fought for independence, the rebellion happened because of the clamping down. So if we can again see it as the teenage that's rebelling to be seen, to be heard, to find a space, to find a voice, and in the entire feminist movement, in the DEF movement, the Pride LGBTQIA lesbian communities have done the most amount of work, for women's rights, for men's rights, for rights of not being stereotyped, of saying I need to have the choice if I want to be, at home, caring, whatever, or all of these things.
Whatever you said makes absolute sense. I will not deny that at all. Because if heterosexual couple are in a relationship, and if that is not known to a lot of people, that repression of that also comes out a little overwhelming. So I'm sure I understand that. But the other thing that I will tell you, I've never spoken about this, but I'm doing this now. I've never spoken about anyone in my life. I've been touched when I was very young.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe because of the kind of life I had or whatever, I have never rebelled against what people call the norm. Because I've accepted it. It's not because my sexuality is different. Nothing. Absolutely not. I still believe I'm straight. I don't want to call myself a cisgender because I don't like to call myself a sissy. These are kind of thoughts that people will have, and so do I. Now, I have not rebelled. I have not, if you look at someone who's gone through a lot of harassment and abuse in the during the young childhood days, today you can easily identify them with the way they dress, with the way, I hate to say this, you never judge a book by the cover, but when you look at someone with a purple hair or pink hair or a green hair, you kind of have a feeling, okay, I have a feeling they've been, there's something that happened to them. For me, I understand perceptions, perspectives. I go into their shoes, I understand maybe that's the case. But for me, it's a little overbearing when I say, wait, I have also gone through this. Why are they doing this? Maybe my coping mechanism is different. My strengths are different compared to them. I completely accept that as well. But because somebody else has done that, when you go shouting at the entire world against you, That is where I find I fail to understand the balance, because as humans, I keep saying this, we are very empathetic. We know to get into perspectives and things. Sometimes we fail doing that, but the larger picture is you want to be accepted, you want to be, be received by people just like everybody else, but you are not opening the doors, is what I'm saying.
So, firstly, thank you for sharing. It's not an easy share, and it's true, by the way. We don't recognize this, but 2 out of 10 children that are abused are boys, and that is a lot. That's a big number. It's not an easy thing to process, but different people find different expressions of that. Again, it's psychologically, emotionally, mentally already the space that the child is in. What are they trying to access? Their family environments, the fears that they have. Um, it's a combination of a lot of these things. So when you say, why do some people act out, why do some not? It's the same thing about, accessing something as crazy as murder. Why do some people kill while some people don't? It is a representation of their mental space, their mental health, where they're at, what they're dealing with, the intensity of what they've dealt with. Irrespective of what is said, there is a spectrum of abuse as well, right? What kind of abuse, how long did it go on for? And it's scary to hear the number of children who have been abused, forget men, women, just the sheer number of badly dealt with, ecosystem that we live in that sexualizes children. That's what needs to be dealt with. How it expresses itself is again based on the person, is based on their persona, is based on their upbringing, is based on their safety, is based on how much they've had to rebel, is based on have they been seen, was it acknowledged, was it something that they processed. Some people process faster, some people never process their trauma, right? So it's about understanding and equipping, which is why I keep talking about mental health, why it's so important to everybody, because all of us have had our load of bags and baggages and shit to carry.
Yeah.
And it's about shedding that. And to shed that, only way is to do self-transformation work. And when you start doing that, your empathy becomes not nice, but kind. You're then able to draw the line at kindness and say, I'm going to be kind, but I'm not going to be nice. Because being nice is almost people-pleasing. It's you trying to do things that you shouldn't be. Whereas being kind is you taking care of the other person and respecting them and taking care of your own needs as well. So in this two-way street, if you're at the receiving end of something that's overwhelming, it's also about educating the other. And also, how important is this other person? That's my thing always. Am I going to engage in this? Is it worth my time, my energy? Or am I going to walk away from it because it doesn't matter to me?
What you said sums it up. Like I was talking to Roman, he said, why do you need to have these pronouns and these gender bifurcations? Because you are not into that confused stream of thought, okay, am I this, am I that? You've got your thing sorted. But for people who go through this is why they need it. Agreed. But again, what I come to, I've mentioned the same term as well to him, straight society. As much as, I will get a lot of flack for this, but I think to just sum it up and, generalize, the straight societies, I don't think we are still stuck back in the day. We have evolved to understand the norms of today. But there comes, and also with these norms, what I mean to say is our lifestyles are completely different from what it was 20 years ago or 15 years ago. It's fast paced, it's stressful, there's a lot of drama happening, social media has messed up our brains. And then today, by one mistake for not being politically correct, the kind of ridiculization I will get, like the tables have turned. Like, the straight society will get because of a mistake for not being politically correct. That is, I don't know, I can't find words to find the kind of emotion that person's going through.
No, but
because the same
I'll
was
tell
gone
you
through somebody else
something.
earlier.
It's my learning as well. Today the tolerance is lower because it's years of abuse people are trying to fight, right? My tolerance to anything that is non-equitable, non-equal is very low because I'm sick of all of the baggage of all the generations and ancestral trauma that women have carried for so long for being ostracized or, burnt at the stake for being witches or whatever it is. It all comes out in full, power. But I'll tell you this. I keep saying guys because it's a very it's the IT 90s term, right? Like guys come along, like Texan guys, right? The wild, wild west Texan, let's go guys. guys is gender, it's,
You say gender fluid now?
yeah, I mean, guys is gender fluid in my usage of it, but technically, guys is still guys, right? It's still boys, it's still men. So I keep getting called out for it. Once I said something, I said, no uterus, no opinion, long ago, which I was still on my learning journey, and I realized that was wrong. Because there are so many women without uteruses, without wombs, they're trans women without wombs, and I unconsciously removed them from the narrative when I said, no uterus, no opinion. Because I was talking about the feminine, right? That's when I, for the first time, came to face that, oh, it is women and women who recognize themselves as women, women who represent themselves as women. It's not just people with uteruses, right? Because people with uteruses could also be not recognizing their gender as their own, and they may be, they may be trans men, who still have uteruses. You will see the seahorse man, and you will see stories nowadays of, trans women with uteruses who are now trans men who still manage to use their uterus, give birth, and things like that. And it's very interesting because it's changing. The way family is being seen is changing, the way. And I think change is important, and I think dialogue through change is important. What you do, I keep saying this when I'm in spaces, I'm not judging your life path. And I request, and I respect you, and I request for the same in return. If we can take that as the middle ground, as a space of learning, being open, like I'm very curious. I feel my curiosity saves me because I'm always like, so tell me, so what does it sound like? What is it like? What is it? So I'm curious from a space of non-intrusive curiosity. I don't want to intrude into your. I don't want you to tell me all your secrets. It's a different story that everybody parks their skeletons in the closet with me, but I'm not choosing to ask for that. I'm just curious to know what is life experience as you. Because for me, when I hear a story, I'm trying to think, what if I was there, and what if this was me, and how would I process it? And, so I'm trying to learn. As an ally, that's the best gift you can bring. A non-judgmental safe space where you respect the other person. That's all.
Which is difficult. Which is very difficult.
Because so much bias, no?
No, it's not because of how we're wired, or we want to be biased, but because of kind of thoughts that they have, the thought processes that they have. I don't know why I don't like to use the word they, because it's like I'm excluding them from the normal, right? You can tell with my words that I don't want to do that, but because of the kind of ridiculization, the repulsiveness, it tends to come across, and even the thoughts.
My suggestion would be to meet a wider segment of these people.
Which is what is difficult to even have a conversation,
No, you should genuinely try and see if you can explore.
You tell me when I have a conversation with someone, and this young people also because they consume a lot of content, not just based on this, but also in terms like the way they say, okay, it's a conspiracy to cut down population and stop people from procreation and all that. To an extent, it could be true, it may not be true, but then we're always consuming this content, so all these sort of thoughts run in. And there comes in one kid, meaning like she must have been just 21, 22 earlier. So she's like, she's lesbian, out and out lesbian. She has a partner. She was like, the government should give subsidy for people who want to have sex change operation. I lost it. Where are you in India? And have you ever thought about the government that we have? Two. Third, there are people who don't have food at home. There are people who don't have jobs. You are not bothered about all of that. There are people who are just like, to get food on a day-to-day basis is difficult. Survive.
Okay, I'll draw a metaphor and I'll make you understand this, right? When the Black Lives Matter movement started.
Scam. I still believe it's a scam.
It's when the fact that black people were being shot at more, it's statistical. The fact that black people are attacked more, all of that came through, and the whole Black Lives Matter movement started. It was because to raise awareness around
against the black people.
Around
the black
the
people,
lives of black people. Now, when somebody says all lives matter, you're taking away the entire
purpose of it.
Purpose of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is to raise awareness, right? The same thing with not all men. If I am talking about a particular man who engaged in something that was not okay, and then you say, but not all men are like that. You're taking away the responsibility
Correct.
that this person should own up to for what has been done. It is the same thing. For us to be able to understand that a lot of these spaces exist in the way they do is because they're not felt safe enough, they're not feeling secure enough to be authentic and be understood and be feeling like they will be left to their own. Every day for them is a fight. They can't rent a house. They are not allowed in restaurants. They have to think twice before they go into a washroom because a lot of abuse happens there. So when you think of the ecosystem that they're in, about what I would suggest as a policy is to look at not subsidies or anything, but is to look at creating a safe environment for people to go through transitions if they so choose to go through. It's a small number. It's not, we're not talking, and we do live in a country where there's so much of, taking away of all things that the government is putting into various campaigns itself is eaten away, right? So we're still talking about that. But corporations are doing that today. Today, a lot of insurance coverages cover trans, operations because it is a very important part of a trans person's journey to make that transition happen. Imagine being in a body that you'd never feel is yours, that you feel
As much as we would want to imagine, I don't think we can
we
even
can't,
quantify
right?
or even
You can't.
measure what's kind of trauma the person's going
So,
through.
respecting that means creating avenues for things like this to happen. Yes, there are 4,000 other things we need to work on, from infrastructure to poverty to all of that. But that doesn't mean we should stop thinking about how can we make a more inclusive world for everybody. How can it make it more equitable for everybody? A lot of poverty exists in trans communities because they don't have access to jobs. At least that was the case till recently. Now you see, trans people in jobs today who are able to hold their own and be financially independent. To a lot of them, sex work was the only access till about a decade plus ago, right? So we need to understand that the lives that we have are very privileged because we don't go through a lot of the um, dichotomies and the struggles that they've been through. And like I said, just be open and receptive and come to it with a very open
Open
mind to
mindset.
say, I see you, I respect you, and if you're rebelling, you don't need to rebel with me. Don't worry. I'm on the same page as you. I'm not attacking you, just to give them that safety to just be. I think that is what is needed.
That is what a lot of people are trying. Like you advocating for, like say they call them the left. I say call us the center, because there's a middle ground that we always want to find and have a balance in life. And somewhere, because of the repulsiveness, is why people don't want to be associated, because their day-to-day lives are already messed up with a lot of things going on. Why will I want to go and add something else and add so much on my plate where I can't even hold it together?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons also people don't want to be associated with people from the community.
And people who want to attack will attack anyway. I have
There
people.
are people who attack.
For me, my trolls range from, I have somebody who has a fake account called the Left Liberal Feminist who's eternally trolling me. And I also have like the right wingers, women who keep saying, you are breaking marriages, your feminism is ruining the structure of society. Right? So people who want to attack from the safety and anonymity from behind a keyboard will attack anyway. It's about the fact that there are people like us who are able to change that narrative for people who probably don't even see us, but know that we are not probably going to be those people who will attack them because they're different.
But would you say, if, say for example, in people who are straight heterosexual, if they don't bother to just involve themselves in, like, I'm not talking about the people who hate, I'm talking about people who were at one point in time, who basically don't give two hoots about whatever they do.
That way, there are people who are sitting on the fence about everything, right from politics to education to awareness to sexuality. That lot of people are always going to exist. It's a journey.
Sometimes sitting on the
Because-
fence is the safest for a lot of people, maybe.
Because they have not gone through what it's like. Unless somebody who's disabled, they don't know what it takes to be on a wheelchair. Unless somebody has a trans person in their life, they don't know. Empathy comes with experience. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, it comes only when they personally go through it. Until then, it's too far away. There's privilege of not knowing. No knowledge is also privilege. So,
Because Romal put it out very rightly. The current generation, the Gen Z, which is what is leading this whole movement right now, they have been born with the doors open, while the previous generation fought for everything. And maybe that's the reason why they're very, very loud. And for people, a lot of them who want to be allies, I think the previous generation makes a lot of sense, because that's where, I mean, they've gone through the whole clique of everything, they've seen it all, and maybe they know what it is to be in the other person's shoes and stuff. But here it's more about shut your face and accept me. So that's how it is today. It's Gen Z way of doing it. But I think, like you said, if people were to be a little more empathetic and understand from both sides,
Yeah.
I think there
The
will
dialogue.
be that would be a better way of uh, coexisting, engaging. And also the other thing I want to ask you is, corporate inclusivity is something that's huge today, especially in terms of LGBTQ.
Yeah.
There was times that it started more with the Hispanic and the Black lives and everything, but now it comes down to more towards hiring more people from the rainbow community. Is that okay to say rainbow community?
Yeah, pride and rainbow is fine. It's absolutely okay. So I think it's important to know that diversity is something that we should choose, right? But I keep saying this, corporations can make it as safe as possible until the public policy advocacy and the society's mindset changes. You're only having this small change in this lacuna, and that's not sustainable change. If you want to change, it has to be across the board, bottom up, top down. But it's a great way to start. It's a good place to start.
So if a corporate is endorsing the LGBTQ, but is directly involving a consumer, for example, I was telling this to Romal, and I'm just asking your thoughts
Yeah.
because you are in this scene. So I ordered a pair of sunglasses last year in the month of May. I got it delivered in June. I won't mention the brand. It came in a nice parrot green color case with the LGBTQ flag on both sides. I didn't care, but also I was like, why are they forcing it on me?
It's just a package. It doesn't matter.
It's a packaging, but
it's awareness, right?
consent
Pride
again?
Month. No, but Pride Month awareness. You may choose to take that sunglass out of its case and use it separately, but the fact that it came to you is a way of saying it is June, it is Pride Month, we're celebrating the rainbow. And ideally, just like I say, Women's Day, celebrating women, Pride Month, celebrating pride, it should be part of our everyday narrative. Our respect for the rainbow should be every day. I love the whole idea of the rainbow because I think it's beautiful. I remember the story, where two kids asked their mom, Mama, what does it mean to be gay? The grandmom's in the room and she's getting very worried about, how do you answer this question? And the mom says, just like a man and women are in love, sometimes men fall in love with other men. So two men in love are called gay men. It's the simplest answer, right? Because when you sexualize it, you're objectifying that entire portion. When you humanize it, you're looking at it as two people in love, two people who are attracted to each other, two people exploring something, the same that cis-het men and women would. Binary is a spectrum. If you were to look at love, love is universal, irrespective of where it's coming from, how it's coming.
Love is what makes the world still be alive in a certain way that it is. But I feel, when someone looks at this conversation, maybe I'm LGBTQ hater and you're part of the community. Let me just bring this to you. Like how people are very agnostic about faith, I have kind of shelved away from being an ally, but I think here is a person who's bringing the conversation from an ally's point of view. And that's why you probably might see that there is a bit of a resistance on both sides, but I think the resistance is more from this side than that side. It's not about to accept, but to believe that they're right. Is probably because that is what we've experienced. Like you said,
our judgment.
Yeah, but that's also like what you said. You are speaking of something because of a place of experience.
Yeah.
And this, or rather, these particular statements or these experiences that I've spoken to you about, because of what we've gone through. Yes, I understand what they've gone through is beyond even thought of emotional trauma, because it's a day-to-day lives of people trying to not be in that body which doesn't belong to them, and being shut down, being shunned down by people, being ridiculed, being called all sorts of names. And when I've heard about the kind of names and stuff, yes, it just breaks me to understand how people can be so inhuman. But when the society doesn't accept you, there's also a place that accepts you amongst the people who are of the same kind but of a different mindset.
But in unsafe environments for a long time is even when you're given safety, you don't trust it. You still feel unsafe. You still don't, you have trust.
You're not sure if
you have trust issues. So the way to extend the hand for it has to come from a space of not just deep empathy and compassion, but also knowing that it could be rejected because of the fear from the other side. right? So the only thing I keep telling people is widen your friend circle and, talk to more people, engage with them, have drinks with them, hang out with them. Because these are my inner circle. The reason I'm able to be an ally is when I was 18, I had, a 16-year-old come out and tell me that this is how I feel. So it's very life altering when there is a friend that you have who you've never built anything around them, right? When you're 16 and 18, especially when we were 16 and 18 in college looked very different.
Yeah.
At least when I was. I'm sure by the time you were in college, it would have changed.
Listen, the last time I said you're not that old, so.
No, I am. So the whole idea of being able to bridge that comes when you're able to create a very close safety net. And that can come only if you've experienced it in person. And you've helped somebody through that pain. You've helped somebody through their trauma. Not that you've helped. You've just held
Just
space.
being there.
Just holding space. Very often we think we have to do something. It's not that. We just need to figure out whether they want to rant, whether they want to vent, if they want to help you by helping them find a solution. It's all of this. It's a full spectrum. How you show up for people, if you can remove all of the extra noise around it, is that human connection. Is that camaraderie, is that safety, is that... So when you're able to build that, whether you build it in a corporate ecosystem or you build it in your friend circle, wherever you go, that energy walks with you.
What you said is something that we as a society also will have to learn to deal with it. And it's not like it's going to happen overnight. It's a process that will take a really long time for us to habitualize ourselves to this sort of an ecosystem and then get into it.
Yeah.
And it is mindset change eventually. That's what needs to happen. But then when there's a hand being lent, I think the hand should come from the other side too. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Because both sides have fear, no? One side needs to drop the fear to be able to walk that mile and say, I'm here, listen, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to create a safe space. If you choose it, because again, consent, you can choose to take it and also be okay with them rejecting it, because honestly, some people may still not feel safe to talk about it or be themselves or be authentic because they're still figuring it out. So as long as we recognize that it's a journey on both sides, but show up with the basic amount of respect, equanimity, and reverence to the other person for being who they are, without judging their sexuality or their gender, you automatically create a space for a more simpler, softer, gentler dialogue.
And if I'm meeting someone for the first time and I don't know what their sexual orientation is, but somehow I get an intuition that, okay, this person is part of the spectrum. So how do I address them? How do I start conversing with them?
Unless they share it, because that is their prerogative, right? You don't ask a woman or another man who's cishet, oh, what's your sexual orientation? Just don't ask it. It doesn't matter. Where does it matter? Sexual orientation matters in conversations that are representative of something specifically intimate, which is up to them to share. It's not, we could be wrong. We could be attacking them. We could be triggering them. We don't even know. So when you don't know, just keep mum.
Right. And when we know that somebody is of a certain sexual orientation or a certain gender, binary, non-binary of sorts, what kind of a conversation do you think will be a little more healthy and not try and become
talk about their work,
friction?
Talk about their life, talk about their experiences, talk about their likes and dislikes. Talk to them like you would talk to anybody.
But what if you make a mistake? Like there are certain people might be apprehensive of saying a few things.
No, don't use gender as a reference, right? That's the first thing. Even with women, don't stereotype. The first rule to a conversation is don't use that bias, which you said, I have an instinct. Don't use that instinct. Park that instinct. Let them come to you if they want to share, if they so want to, talk about it. Because when you're meeting people in social settings, their sexual orientation is irrelevant unless they speak about it or they're talking about activism in relation to it. So it's about allowing people to be just who they are without asking questions. So things like being gender neutral. So who's your partner? Is your partner here? Right? It's such a simple thing. It can address anybody. and you're being safe. It's about being safe and diplomatic without saying something like, oh, where's your husband or your wife? Say, where's your spouse or your partner? It makes an automatic difference in the way you're addressing a room, right? So it's about how you use language, how you use interactions.
Also, there's I don't know if this might work, but this is like a cheat code that I use sometimes when I don't remember someone's name. I said bro or something, but here it's difficult to use certain dialogues. But what I've done once, not amongst the community, is like used words that are abusive words, but in a more affectionate way. Like people call guldu or the other
Yeah.
close sounding word as well.
Yeah.
So you just address that, hey, do something like that, and then it sounds like you're calling it out of affection.
Yeah.
You think that might work?
See,
like
the
a cheat
problem
code?
with the problem.
I don't know. I'm treating it like a game. I don't know why, but I'm just asking you.
It's not a. I mean, it's not a cheat code. I think the comfort.
Yeah.
You will know. It's like just like when you're getting to know somebody, you
can gauge the energy.
gauge. You can gauge how comfortable they are about certain topics. You can gauge how the connection is. You can gauge what you can say to them, like how you would physically be. Like I'm a very hugs person, but now I've started to ask people, "Are you okay with a hug?" Because a lot of people are not really open to the kind of
hugging
hug,
thing.
and I give long, happy, warm hugs, but not a lot of people are used to it. So now I've started saying, okay, I have to, ask for that consent. Are you a hugger? Like, would you like a hug?
What meant bugger?
So it's things like that. It's being present mindfully to the nuances of that conversation. And then when you start from there, when you start with kindness, you'll usually find your way.
This is the first time I had a conversation with Shreya, and where I got a little resistive, and to finally come to a consensus and understanding that worlds need to shake hands together,
Yeah.
and maybe one hand has to extend out a little more. But it's a difficult one to do, but I'm not saying it's impossible.
We just had a really difficult conversation in the most respectful, safe way.
That's
this is
how
what we
safe our
need to
studio
do.
is, yeah, Shreya.
This is all we need to do.
So I think just like this, I think when one hand is reached out, the other hand is just shown like a finger also, I think it'll become easier for one part of the society to say, okay, I can extend man because I see a little bit of a hope there.
Yeah.
So that will happen. Hopefully it'll happen in time.
It's like dogs. You can smell, the dogs can smell whether you like dogs or not.
Oh, yeah,
They know
yeah.
whether you're
Yeah.
a dog person or not.
Yeah.
It's the same way. The minute you work on yourself and what your biases and your judgments may be and you remove them, your engagement with the other side will become automatically very seamless. It's just about working on that a little bit. And then it'll sort of, smooth in, ease in.
Also, one last question, since this is a thing in the corporate world today, the D&I scores are huge today because of hiring people from the not color, sorry, from the community,
communities,
right?
yes, yeah.
So when you do this to say for people from the LGBTQ community, you just hire them as normal people. Why do you differentiate them? Because then what happens is you're making them not part of the inclusive, and you're giving them a separate treatment altogether.
So I'll tell you what, that is possible in an already equitable world where they already have jobs and opportunities which they get irrespective. What we're trying to do right now is correct the course. The fact that only 10 years ago we've started employing them means that there's a lot of course correction to do. Just like why we have return to work women programs, why we have women specific hiring, diversity hiring, it is a course correction measure. In an ideal world where pays are equal, where access is equal, where opportunities are equal, where there's no bias, it's absolutely okay to have, anybody being hired being the best person for the job. But today it has to be intentional because we have a lot of delta. The gap has to be covered. For the gap to be covered, it's like, saying we need to set aside X number of these seats to ensure that it's inclusion by intention.
But do you think these roles are given based on the skill and talent and not based on...
Absolutely. I don't
Yeah.
think any corporation will hire and keep somebody who's not... The thing is, in the past, these people were not even featured on the list of the best people for the job. Now, when it's intentional hiring, I don't think any corporate hire saying, but the judgment is there when it's a diversity hire. Even for a woman, they'll say, oh, she was a diversity hire. Doesn't mean the job is any different. Doesn't mean, and in all probability, if you're a woman or a non-binary person, you're being paid much lesser for the same job versus what a man would have been paid. So, it's about course correcting. And until that time, we will need to set aside a certain, and the way it's addressed needs to be different. The minute you say it's a diversity hire, it's a problem for that person only because they're not being included,
Right.
like you said. But it's about changing that narrative. And that change will take time.
Change is inevitable. It's the only constant.
It also takes time to
Yeah.
happen.
So that is something that's going to be happening in the distance. But for now, you've come quite the distance from Basaveshwar Nagar till here. No, but RR Nagar.
RR Nagar, yeah.
My God, RR Nagar to meet RR.
Yeah.
Thank you so much once again. As always, it's an absolute delight to just chat with you and just to look into your eyes and talk to you. There's so much of honesty that comes in. And you're one of the most genuine persons I know to have a conversation on anything, because there is no fast, there's no fad, there's no agenda to be driven in, but it's pure sense and driven in the best possible way.
Oh, thank you. I think it's lovely to meet somebody who's open, because not a lot of times you get to have conversations with people where they're open to exploring, saying, oh, is it? Okay, I hadn't thought of this. And it's always a pleasure to be here because we do that so beautifully and seamlessly. So every conversation with you has been wonderful.
Only if you were just like next door, no? We could do this like every day.
Every day. Come over. A long distance, but
I have
come
to take
over.
holidays and come.
Over beer and...
That sounds like beer and biryani, like the Josephite
yeah,
way.
like the Josephite way, beer and biryani.
Absolute pleasure once again, Shreya, and all the best for everything that's lined up. And happy birthday to your little one today, because
thank
you've
you.
taken time out and come here. In spite
Thank
of
you. Yeah, it's only in the evening. She's in school right now. So
Okay.
I will send the wishes to her.
That.
Thank
And
you
also
so
a
much.
little hi to the little brother, who's not so
Yes.
little anymore.
Yeah, I will pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you.